Friday night. The air in the south side of Chicago was thick enough to chew, smelling of wet pavement and the distant, metallic tang of the stockyards. Rain hammered the single-pane windows of the Union Hotel, a place where men with calloused hands and tired eyes came to drink away the memory of their late shift. I am Nora Hale. By day, I sit in sterile lecture halls, learning to chart the human heart, how to stop a bleed, how to read the subtle signs of a body in crisis. I am a student of nursing. By night, I stand behind this bar, this long plank of scarred mahogany, and I pour whiskey, listening to hearts break in real time. The clock above the liquor bottles showed it was past 11 o'clock. The bar was quiet, just the low mumble of a baseball game on the television and the clink of glasses as I polished them. My mind was a million miles away, somewhere between renal failure and the utility bill I had to pay on Monday. Then the door swung open, bringing a violent rush of cold, wet air, and my sister, June. She looked tiny, like a ghost wrapped in a soaked jacket. Her blonde hair was dark with rain, clinging to her pale cheeks. She was shaking, her eyes wide and terrified, fixed on something just behind her. He followed her in. The air in the bar did not just get quiet, it died. The men at the far tables stopped talking. The game played onto an empty room. Matteo De Luca. His name was the gravity that held this part of the city together, and the force that tore it apart. He was the man who owned the trucks, the docks, the gray market goods that flowed in and out like the river. He was the man my father, a firefighter, had warned me about before he died. He was dressed in a simple, dark wool sweater. It looked soft. It probably cost more than my entire nursing program. The rain clung to the expensive fibers. He was not alone. 2 men, built like refrigerators and dressed in dark suits, flanked him. They did not look at anyone. They just scanned the exits. Matteo De Luca's focus was entirely on my sister. He walked her into the center of the worn linoleum floor, his hand not touching her, but guiding her with an invisible pressure. His voice was low, smooth, almost gentle. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever heard. I explained the terms. June. He said, he sounded patient. He sounded kind. The terms are not suggestions. They are the structure. June was trembling so hard I could see it from across the room. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I just need more time. The clinic, they changed my—" He cut her off, not by raising his voice, but by smiling. It was a slow, thin smile that did not touch his eyes. "You are a creature of excuses," he said, still quiet. He looked around the room, his gaze sweeping over the few patrons, over me. It was a look of profound disappointment, the kind a man might give a faulty piece of machinery. "You are weak, and you waste my time. People who are weak, who waste the time of others, they do not deserve second chances." He was insulting her. He was standing in public, under the buzzing fluorescent lights, and tearing down everything she was fighting to rebuild. I saw her hand tremble as she clutched her purse. My blood did not just get hot, it evaporated. I did not plan, I acted. My hand closed around the old-fashioned I had just built for a customer who had not yet claimed it, a heavy, thick-bottomed tumbler. The ice was solid. The scent of bourbon and bitters was strong. I stepped out from behind the dark, scarred wood of the bar. I walked right up to him. He turned, surprise flickering in his dark eyes for just 1 second. I threw the drink. The amber liquid arced through the air and hit him square in the chest. The ice cubes bounced off the dark wool. The glass, heavy and solid, slipped from my wet fingers and shattered on the floor. Silence, absolute, terrifying silence. The only sound was the drip of bourbon from his sweater onto the broken glass. The air exploded with the scent of 100-proof whiskey, the sweet spice of orange bitters, and the sharp, clean smell of the orange. It mixed with the damp wool of his clothes. The 2 men beside him moved. They did not reach. They did not hesitate. Their hands were inside their coats, gripping their weapons. I could see the imprint of the muzzles against the fabric. They were waiting for one word, one single word from him, and I would be dead. I did not breathe. I kept my eyes locked on his. Matteo De Luca did not move. He looked down at the dark, spreading stain on his chest. He looked at the shattered glass at his feet. He did not look angry. He did not look surprised. He slowly, deliberately, reached into his trouser pocket and pulled out a white, folded handkerchief. He began to dab at his sweater, a useless, gentle motion. Then he lifted his head. His eyes found mine. A slow smile spread across his face, a genuine smirk that reached his eyes this time. He looked amused. He spoke, his voice a low murmur that only I could hear over the pounding of my own heart. "At last, Ger," he said, "someone honest." As if his words had broken a spell. June let out a choked sob. She stumbled back, and her purse, the one she clutched like a lifeline, slipped from her grasp. It hit the floor and spilled its contents, a bottle of prescription methadone, a schedule for her court-mandated addiction counseling, and a folded piece of paper, a loan agreement. The letterhead was printed in a friendly green font, the De Luca Community Ventures Fund, his organization, the fake helping hand that was actually his back door, his way of owning people. Sal, the bar manager, saw the logo. He saw the men with their hands on their guns. He was a smart man. He ducked behind the counter and his hand slammed the red panic button under the ledge. It was not a loud alarm, just a high-pitched, electronic shriek that meant police. The timing was perfect, or maybe it was the worst possible timing. The door to the back banquet room flew open. The hotel workers' union was holding their regular meeting. Eli, their chief organizer, a man I knew from a dozen picket lines, stepped out first. He was big, broad-shouldered, and he did not look intimidated. He took in the scene in one glance. Me, standing in a puddle of bourbon. June, crying against the wall. And Matteo De Luca, flanked by his soldiers. Behind Eli, the room emptied. Ruth, the head chef with arms like boulders, came out, followed by 20 maids, bellhops, and kitchen staff. The air crackled. This was not just a bar fight. This was neighborhood politics colliding head-on with the underworld. I grabbed June's arm. My hands were finally shaking. "We have to go," I whispered, yanking her toward the side exit, the one that led to the alley. One of De Luca's men moved to block us. He was a mountain. "Let her go." Matteo De Luca's voice was still quiet, but it had the sharp, clean authority of a scalpel. The mountain stopped. Matteo held my gaze. He bent down, graceful and slow, and picked something up from the floor. My wallet. It must have fallen from my apron pocket. He held it out to me. He did not step closer. I had to step toward him to take it. His fingers did not brush mine. "You owe me a conversation," he said, his voice flat. "Tomorrow night." At that exact moment, the windows lit up with flashing red and blue lights. A Chicago police patrol car. It slowed as it approached the hotel. The two officers inside looked at the crowd. They saw the union members. They saw Matteo De Luca standing in the middle of the room, dripping. The officers did not get out. They did not even stop. The car accelerated and drove right past, disappearing into the rain. No one with a badge and a pension was going to walk into this. The crowd in the bar understood. They began to evaporate, moving toward the doors. But nobody turned their back completely. Their ears were strained, their eyes wide. They were witnesses, and everyone in this neighborhood knew what happened to witnesses. My heart was a fist beating against my ribs, louder than the bass from the jukebox. I had done it. I had crossed a line that you cannot uncross. Nora Hale, had assaulted the most dangerous man in Southside Chicago. But I looked at June, who was weeping silently into my shoulder, and I felt nothing. No regret. I would do it again. Matteo finished dabbing at his chest. The handkerchief was ruined. He looked at it for a moment, then folded it neatly and slipped it back into his pocket. He turned, without another word, and walked out of the bar. His men followed him, two shadows merging with the night. He left the cold draft from the door, and something else. A scent. It was warm, Clean oak and the sharp, charred smell of the burnt orange. It was the smell of a threat and an invitation, woven together. Am I honest, I wondered? Or am I just a fool? I was pulling June toward the door, my legs feeling like water, when one of his men, the younger one, reappeared. He did not enter. He just leaned through the doorway. He tossed a small, folded cocktail napkin onto the wet, sticky floor near my feet. "Midway dock, number 14. He said. His voice was bored. 10 o'clock. He does not like to be kept waiting. He was gone before I could even nod. I stared at the napkin. My whole body was shaking now, the adrenaline draining away, leaving a cold, sharp fear. I bent and picked it up. I pulled the cheap pen from my apron pocket and, in the dim light of the bar, I wrote the address on the palm of my left hand. Midway Dock 14, 10 o'clock. I looked at the blue ink staining my skin. In this city, I thought, how much does honesty cost? I had a terrible feeling I was about to find out. I got June home. I half carried her up the 3 flights of stairs to our apartment, her feet dragging on the worn carpet. The rain followed us in, soaking the entryway. She did not say a word. The fight had drained everything from her. She collapsed onto the sofa, her body curling into a tight ball. I pulled the worn Afghan over her. Within a minute, her breathing steadied, shallow but regular. She was asleep. I stood there, dripping onto the floor, my apron still smelling of spilled bourbon and bitter orange. My hands were shaking. I looked down at my left palm, at the blue ink I had smeared when I clutched the pen. Midway Dock 14, 10 o'clock. How did we get here? How did my life, a careful, grueling routine of anatomy, textbooks and whiskey sours, crash into the man who ran the South Side? It started a week ago. No, that is not true. It started 15 years ago. It started the night my father died, and he was a firefighter, crew chief at Engine 51. He was all about structure, about rules. He was a good man. There was a fire at a warehouse, complex down by the river, a massive 5-alarm blaze that lit the sky orange for miles. The official report, the one I read until the paper turned brittle, called it faulty wiring. The neighborhood called it something else. They called it DeLuca. The rumors were thick and persistent, like the smoke that clung to our clothes for weeks after the funeral. They said DeLuca Sr., Mateo's father, torched his own property. He needed the insurance money to fight some internal war. My father went into that building to find a man the report said was trapped. He never came out. My mother could not stand the silence of the apartment. The smell of smoke that she swore lingered in the curtains. She left 6 months later. She left me, at 10 years old, and June, who was only 5. She left us with a paid-off mortgage and a legacy of ash. So I built a life out of what was left. I am Nora Hale. I am a second-year nursing student at Chicago City College. I spend my days learning the precise Latin names for every bone, every nerve. I learn how to insert an intravenous line into a collapsing vein, how to keep a heart beating, how to listen to the body's quietest whispers of distress. I believe in science. I believe in protocol. At night, I am a barmaid at the Union Hotel. I stand behind the mahogany, and I serve men who smell like my father, men who work with their hands. I serve them liquor to dull the ache in their backs and the fear in their hearts. The 2 jobs keep me balanced. The hospital is about saving lives. The bar is about surviving them. Every dollar, every single tip, goes into an account. It is the June Fund. It is for a private rehabilitation program, a place with green lawns and actual doctors, a place that cannot be shut down by a politician's pen. June had been clean for 8 months, 243 days. We had a calendar. We were marking them off. Her laugh was starting to sound like her own again. We were planning to get pancakes to celebrate. Then the letter arrived. It was printed on cheap, gray paper from the city. The state budget had been slashed. The public methadone program, the one that kept June tethered to the world, was being restructured. Her counselor was laid off. Her spot was gone. I came home from my clinical rotation and found her in the bathroom. She was not crying. She was just sitting on the floor, staring at the wall, The air smelled of burnt foil and sweet, chemical smoke. It was the smell of my own personal failure. "I fixed it. Nora," she whispered, her voice rough. She'd been crying. She held out a pamphlet. It was glossy, printed in a cheerful, reassuring green. The DeLuca Community Ventures Fund, helping our neighborhood grow. My blood did not just run cold, it froze solid in my veins. I have one rule, one single unbending principle that I repeat to myself every night as I lock the cash register. You do not compromise with the people who sell despair to the poor. You do not negotiate with the sickness. And Matteo DeLuca, the heir to the man who burned my father alive, was the merchant king of despair. "June, no," I said. My voice was calm, my nursing voice. Never alarm the patient. "He was nice. Nora," she insisted, pulling away. She meant the loan officer. "He was not like those other payday places. He was kind. He said they were on time. On their word. No yelling, no hitting." That was her baseline for human decency. No hitting. My heart broke all over again. I took the paperwork from her. I am not a lawyer, but I am a student. I am trained to read charts, to look for the anomaly, the symptom hidden in the data. The interest rate was low, suspiciously low, maybe 8%. But the fine print was where the real trap lay. It was not a simple loan. It was a contract to receive the $500. June had to agree to sign up for a new payday advance application on her phone, a digital wallet service. It had a cartoon pig on the logo. The contract gave this app, this shell company, the right to access her bank account directly. They were not trapping her with interest rates. They were trapping her with her own labor. They would own every paycheck she ever earned, taking their cut before she even saw the money. It was clean. It was digital. It was legal. It was the most brutal kind of violence, dressed up as convenience. This is the new Chicago. They are scrubbing the riverfront clean, building glass towers where the warehouses used to be, the old ways. The cash in envelopes, they are disappearing. The rumors at the bar, the whispers from Eli, my friend at the union, are all about the Eastern Europeans. They are not interested in whiskey trucks or gambling. They deal in code. They deal in apps. They are the new monsters, a systemic threat that is invisible. And Matteo DeLuca, it seemed, was either trying to become one of them, or he was being eaten alive by them. At that moment, I did not care which it was. I thought about calling Eli. He's the lead organizer for the hotel workers. He has a voice that can stop traffic and a belief in solidarity that is absolute. He would know what to do. I thought about calling Ruth, the head chef. She has been in this neighborhood for 40 years. She would have told me to burn the contract and bolt the door. I even thought about going to Father Miguel. His church, St. Mary's, is more than a church. It is a sanctuary, a food pantry, a legal clinic. He's the neighborhood's conscience. But this was not their burden. It was June's secret. It was my shame. I had failed to protect her. So I did what I am trained to do. In my clinical rotation, when a patient codes, you do not panic, you assess, you breathe, you act. I am good at reading people. It is a survival skill. I read the micro-expressions, the tiny twitches that betray the words. When June told me the loan officer was nice, her eyes darted to the left, a memory recall, but a stressful one. She was hiding something. I pushed, gently. What else? June. She broke. She was already late on the first payment. She had misunderstood the terms. The app had already seized her entire check from her part-time job. She had nothing. That was why she was at the bar tonight. She was terrified. She was looking for me, for help. And she found him instead. I looked at her, sleeping on my sofa, a victim of a digital loan shark with a friendly logo. My skills, my calm precision, my ability to place a needle perfectly, none of it mattered. It could not stop this. I went to the sink and turned on the cold water. I scrubbed my palm, washing the blue ink, the address, from my skin. The water ran dark, but it did not matter. I would not forget. Midway Dock 14, 10 o'clock. Matteo DeLuca called me honest. He said it like it was a rare, strange artifact he had just discovered. He said it like a compliment. But in this city, honesty is just a word for someone who is about to get hurt. I am a nursing student. I know how to handle blood. I know how to suture a wound. I had no idea how to face a man who sold poison as medicine. A man who smiled when you threw his own whiskey in his face. A man who inherited my father's ashes. I dried my hands. I would not be late. The air at Midway Dock was different from the rest of the city. It was heavy, wet, and smelled of rust and the deep, cold stillness of the Chicago River. It smelled like secrets. I walked past stacks of shipping containers, their metal sides slick with damp. The address was for Warehouse 14, a massive brick structure whose windows were all dark. I pulled my thin jacket tighter. My hands were steady. In nursing, we call it compartmentalization. You put the fear in a box so your hands can do the work. My fear was in a very small, very tight box. I expected guards. I expected spotlights. I expected a black sedan with tinted windows. There was nothing. Just the sound of water lapping against the concrete pier and the distant hum of the freeway. I found the side entrance. The metal door was slightly ajar, a single bar of pale yellow light cutting across the wet ground. I pushed it open. He was inside. He was alone. The warehouse was cavernous, mostly empty, smelling of dust and old cargo, and he was not sitting behind a desk. He was leaning against a steel support beam, his arms crossed over his chest. He was wearing a different sweater. Just as dark. Just as expensive. He looked like a university professor waiting for a late student, not the man who held the South Side in his palm. I stopped about 20 feet away from him. I did not want to get any closer. I did not want him to smell the fear I was keeping locked down. He did not waste time with greetings. He just watched me for a moment, his head tilted. "Why did you throw the drink?" he asked. His voice was quiet, conversational, but it echoed slightly in the vast, empty space. I had rehearsed a dozen different answers. I had planned to be cold, defiant, angry, but his simple, direct question disarmed me. He had not asked why I was brave or why I was stupid. He asked why I did it. "You humiliated my sister," I said. My voice was steady. I was proud of that. "You called her weak. You stood in a public room and tore her down just to sell her a debt contract." Matteo De Luca pushed himself off the beam and took a few steps toward me. He stopped when I tensed. He held up a hand, a gesture of peace. "I did not sell her a debt," he said. He sounded tired, a deep, profound weariness that did not match his face. He smiled, that same thin, weary smile from the bar. "I sell discipline. Your sister lacks it." "She is sick," I said, my voice rising. "She is not weak. She is sick, and your organization is preying on her." "Is it?" he asked. He walked over to a small metal table I had not noticed. On it sat a single, neat manila folder. He picked it up and held it out. I did not move. He sighed, then tossed the folder onto the concrete floor. It slid and stopped at my feet. "Pick it up, Nora," he said. I stared at it. I could feel the trap closing, but I bent and retrieved the file. I opened it. It was June's loan. It was exactly as I remembered. $500, the cheerful green logo, and the interest rate, 8%. "That is lower than any bank in this city would offer her," Matteo said, reading my thoughts. "It is lower than a credit card. I am not a loan shark. I am a solution." "This is not a solution," I said, flipping the page to the fine print. "This labor consultation clause, this app." "That," he said, "is the discipline." He pointed at the paper. "Your sister has no collateral. She has no credit. She has only her time. The agreement is simple. She borrows from me, she works for me, or for my associates. The app assigns her shifts at businesses that are part of my alliance. Kitchens, cleaning crews, warehouses. She works off the debt. It is structured. It is fair." "It is slavery," I said, the word tasting like acid. You force her to take terrible shifts at all hours. You ruin her chances of holding a real job. You own her." He was quiet for a long time. "The world is not a kind place. Nora, you work in a hospital. You should know that. I am offering structure where there is chaos." She broke the terms. She missed her shifts. The humiliation, as you call it, was the consequence. I closed the file. "So you are just a very organized monster." He laughed, a short, dry bark that echoed, "Maybe, but I am a monster with a problem, and you are going to solve it." I looked at him. "I'm not going to do anything for you." "Yes, you are," he said, "because if you do, I will take this." He tapped the folder I was holding. "And I will burn it. June's debt, gone. The app deleted from her phone. She will be free of the discipline." My heart hammered. This was it. The price. "What do you want?" "City Hall," he said. The word filled with disgust. "They are worried about their public image. They are pressuring me. They want me to prove I am a legitimate businessman, a community partner." He almost spit the words. "They are forcing me to create an independent community oversight committee. It is nonsense. A public relations game." "And what does that have to do with me?" "I need a secretary for this committee," he said. "A volunteer, someone to take the notes, someone to make the coffee, someone to sit in a room 3 times a week and listen to politicians and lawyers congratulate themselves. I need you to do it, for 3 months." I stared at him. It was the most absurd thing I had ever heard. Me. A barmaid, a nursing student. Why me? You have 1,000 lawyers. He stepped closer. It was only a few feet away now. I could smell that same scent from the bar, the warm oak, the char. It was his cologne. It was clean and dangerous. "'Cause my lawyers lie," he whispered. "My associates lie. The politicians lie. Everyone in my entire world is paid to tell me what I want to hear. And then you walked across a room, looked me in the eye, and you threw a drink in my face." He leaned in, his voice dropping so low I could barely hear it. "At last, someone honest. I do not need another liar. I need someone who will tell me the truth. I need you to sit in that room and be my eyes. I need someone to fix what I inherited. Nora. And I cannot do it if I cannot see it clearly." I smelled the trap. It was a big, obvious, steel-toothed trap. He wanted to put me on his payroll, even as a volunteer. He wanted to own me, just like he owned June, but with a different kind of contract. But as the fear screamed at me to run, my mind, my cold, calculating nurse's mind, saw something else. An opening. If I was in that room, I would not just see the politicians. I would see the books. I would see the network. I would see the names of the businesses in his alliance. I would see exactly how this digital loan shark app worked. He was handing me the key. "One condition," I said. My voice did not shake. He nodded, waiting. "June," I said. "You said you would wipe the debt. I want more. She is protected. No one from your world ever speaks to her again. No one comes to our house. No one looks at her. She is off limits. Completely." He held my gaze. I did not blink. I was taking her vitals, and I could not look away. "You have my word," he said. He did not offer his hand. He just gave a single, sharp nod. The deal was done. "I will have the details of the first meeting sent to you," he said, turning away. He was dismissing me. I walked out of the warehouse. I did not run. I walked, one foot in front of the other, down the pier, past the silent containers. I did not breathe freely until I was back on the street, under the sickly yellow glow of the streetlights. I had just made a deal with the man who probably killed my father. I had traded my time for my sister's freedom. I was halfway home when I noticed it. A car, an old Dodge, maybe from the 1990s. It was dark. Its paint chipped. It was 2 blocks behind me. I turned right. It turned right. I turned left. It turned left. It was not one of Mateo's cars. His cars were new, black, and obvious. This one was a ghost. It felt different. I ducked into a 24-hour convenience store. I walked straight to the back, by the refrigerated milk, and waited, my heart pounding. The Dodge slowed as it passed the store, then sped up and disappeared. My hand was shaking as I paid for a bottle of water I did not want. I stepped back outside. The street was empty. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. A text message. Blocked number. Just 5 words. DeLuca is not the biggest threat. I stared at the screen, the blue light illuminating my face. The first person I went to see was not June. I went to the Union Hall. It was late, but the lights were still on. Eli was there, as I knew he would be. He was sleeping on his desk, his head resting on a stack of flyers. I shook him awake. "Eli, I need to talk to you." He sat up, rubbing his face, his eyes instantly sharp. "Nora, what is wrong? You look like you saw a ghost." "Worse," I said. "I just took a job with Matteo DeLuca." I told him everything. The bar, the dock, the committee, the debt. Eli did not interrupt. He just listened, his expression growing darker. When I finished, he stood up and started pacing. "It is a front. Nora, of course it is a front, he said, slamming his hand on a filing cabinet. "We've been hearing rumors for months. The federals are sniffing around. They are building a case. Rico, probably. DeLuca is trying to look legitimate. This committee is his laundry. He's going to wash his reputation using good, honest neighborhood people." "I know," I said, "but he is wiping June's debt, and I will have access. I can see how it works." "Access to what?" Eli snapped. "A prison cell, Nora. You cannot go in there alone. These are not just street thugs. This is organized. This is corporate." "Then what do I do?" I asked, my voice finally cracking. "He has her. He had her." Eli stopped pacing. He looked at me, his eyes softening. He put his big, warm hand on my shoulder. "You are not alone," he said. "This is what the union is for. This is what solidarity means. You are going in. Then I am going in with you." "How?" "DeLuca needs community partners." "Right," Eli smiled, a grim, determined smile. "I am the union. I am the community. I will demand a seat at that table. If he is building a front, we will be the ones to find the back door. We will go in together, and we will tear his whole rotten house down." The first meeting of the Community Oversight Committee was not held at City Hall. It was held in the basement of St. Mary's, the church run by Father Miguel. The room smelled of damp concrete, old hymnals, and mildew. I arrived first. As the secretary, a folding table had been set up. On it sat a thermal carafe of coffee that tasted like rust and a plate of stale cookies. The coffee machine in the corner looked like it had not been cleaned since 1985. Eli arrived next, his union jacket zipped up to his chin. He looked around the room, his expression one of complete disgust. "This is where he does business, a basement." "It is humble." A voice said from the doorway. Father Miguel entered. He was a tall, thin man with a kind face that was all sharp angles and deep set, compassionate eyes. He wore his simple black clerical clothes and the large wooden cross that never left his neck. He smiled warmly at me. "Nora, Eli, thank you for coming. Our work here is important." The other members trickled in. A lawyer named Harris, who offered his services pro bono, his eyes already tired, and a representative from City Hall, a young woman in a bright blue suit named Sarah. She smiled constantly, a brilliant, high-wattage smile that was pure public relations. She kept talking about synergy and community outreach. Matteo DeLuca did not attend. He sent his regrets. He was, as Sarah put it, reviewing preliminary proposals. I was given the files, 3 thick binders. They contained the charter for the DeLuca Community Ventures Fund, its list of associated businesses, and the terms of service for the loan application. "The meeting was a performance," Sarah smiled. Harris, the lawyer, looked confused, Eli argued, his voice booming, about labor violations. Father Miguel spoke about the neighborhood's soul, about giving people dignity, not just debt. I said nothing. I just made the coffee, I took the notes, and I watched. That night, I took the binders home. June was at a meeting, her first one since the incident at the bar. She was really trying. I sat at our small kitchen table, my nursing textbooks pushed to one side, and I opened the binders. It was just like reading a patient's chart. You do not look at the main complaint. You look at the labs, you look at the history, you look for the anomaly. The DeLuca Community Ventures Fund was a ghost. It had almost no capital. It was a front, just as Eli had said. The real money was not coming from Mateo. The loan application, the one with the cartoon pig, was operated by a different company, a tech firm with an address in Delaware. I kept digging. By 2 a.m, I found it. The Delaware company was owned by a shell corporation in Cyprus, and that corporation was owned by a holding group with ties to an Eastern European tech syndicate. Mateo DeLuca was not the monster. He was the middleman. He was the local face, the man who provided the muscle and the neighborhood access, but the app, the digital engine that was sucking the life from my neighborhood, was owned by people he probably never met. This was not mafia. This was digital black finance. He was not the king. He was just a high-profile employee, and this system was probably eating him, too. A week later, a woman came into the bar. She was not there to drink. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. Her name was Maria Rivas. She was a single mother, 3 children. She worked as a cleaner in one of the downtown office buildings. She had used the app, the one with the pig. She needed money for her son's asthma medication. She missed one payment. The app did not call her. It did not send a warning. It simply seized her entire paycheck from her bank account, legally. She showed me the printout. Her balance was 0. Her rent check bounced. She was being evicted on the 1st of the month. "I cannot go to the shelters," she wept, her hands clutching the eviction notice. "My son, he cannot be around the dust." I took her, not to the police, but to the committee. I brought her straight to Father Miguel. We met in the church basement again, this time. Mateo DeLuca was there. He stood in the back, near the door, his arms crossed. He did not speak. I sat Maria down. I gave her a cup of water. "Tell them," I said. She told her story. Her voice was small, but it filled the damp room. She spoke of the app, the zeroed-out account, the eviction. When she finished, there was a heavy silence. Sarah, the City Hall representative, looked horrified. Her public relations smile was gone. This was not synergy. Eli was red-faced, vibrating with rage. Father Miguel walked over to Maria and placed a hand on her shoulder. "We will find a place for you, my child," he said, his voice thick with compassion. "The church will help." Mateo said nothing. He just watched Maria. His face was unreadable. It was a mask of cold neutrality. He looked at her not as a person, but as a problem, a data point that had gone wrong. He left the meeting before it was over. The next day, I called Maria. She was crying again, but this time, they were different tears. "I do not understand," she said. "A man came from the landlord. He said the rent was paid. He said it was paid for 3 months. He said it was an anonymous donation to the building fund. Nora, who did this?" I knew. As secretary, I had requested digital access to the committee's transaction logs for my meeting minutes. I logged in. There it was. A transfer from a secondary account under DeLuca Holdings, routed through 3 different subsidiaries and landing in the account of Maria's landlord. Mateo had fixed it. He had done it silently, covering his tracks, cleaning up the mess his own machine had made. He did not want credit. He just wanted the problem gone. The small victory felt like acid. He was paying for the damage, but he was not stopping the machine. 2 nights later, my world fell apart again. I was at the library, studying for an anatomy final, when my phone rang. It was June. She was incoherent. I could hear her sobbing, the words tearing out of her. "He's gone. Nora, he's gone. He promised he would wait. He's gone." I ran the 6 blocks to our apartment. I found her on the bathroom floor. Her friend, the one she went to meetings with, had relapsed. He had been clean for a year, and he went to sleep and he did not wake up. An overdose. June's grief was a tidal wave. It drowned her 8 months of sobriety in an instant. She was holding a small, crumpled piece of foil. "I cannot," she whispered, looking up at me, her eyes destroyed. It hurts too much. I cannot do it. I went into nurse mode, vitals, pupils, respiration. She was fading. I grabbed her, pulling her to her feet. "No," I said, my voice hard. "You will not. I will not let you." I half dragged, half carried her out of the building and into a cab. "Mercy Hospital," I yelled. The emergency room was a war zone. It was Saturday night, Masai. It smelled of blood and antiseptic and unwashed bodies. A man was screaming from a gurney. A child was coughing. The triage nurse looked at June with dead eyes. "It will be at least 4 hours," she said, not even looking up. "She is a potential overdose," I said, using my clinical voice. "Her respiration is shallow. She needs to be seen now." "So does everyone else," and the nurse said. I was about to start screaming when I felt the air change. The noise of the room seemed to drop, the way it had in the bar. I turned. He was there, Matteo De Luca. He was standing by the ambulance bay doors, 10 steps away. He was still in his dark suit from whatever meeting he had been in. He looked completely out of place, a wolf in a sheep pen. He did not look at me. He did not look at June. He walked straight to the billing administrator's desk. He spoke quietly for less than 10 seconds. I saw him slide his card, a black piece of metal, across the counter. The administrator, a woman who looked as tired as the triage nurse, suddenly stood up straight. She nodded. She picked up a phone. "Gurney," she called out. "Room 3, now." Within a minute, June was taken back. A doctor saw her instantly. Matteo did not follow. He just stood by the doors, a silent sentinel. He was watching. He was ensuring his promise was kept. June was protected. He was paying the bill. He was fixing the problem. He did not speak to me. He just met my eyes from across the chaotic room. He gave one sharp nod, the same nod from the warehouse. Then he turned and was gone, vanishing back into the night. I sat in the plastic waiting room chair, my hands smelling of June's sweat and my own fear. My phone vibrated. Another blocked number. This time, the message was longer. "Do not trust anyone wearing a cross. He takes the confessions, but he serves a different God." I stared at the words. Father Miguel. It was impossible. He ran the food pantry. He ran the shelter. He was the one person in this neighborhood everyone trusted. I had just sat in his basement. I had brought Maria Rivas to him. He was the one who spoke of dignity and compassion. It was a lie. It had to be a lie. But the message was specific. I was still reeling when Eli found me. He had heard about June. "How is she?" he asked, his voice low. "She is stable," I said, my voice hollow. "They are keeping her for observation." "Good," he said. He sat beside me. "Because we have work to do. I am not letting what happened to Maria Rivas happen again. I am calling a community meeting at the church." "Eli, maybe not the church," I said, my mind spinning. "It has to be the church," he insisted. "It is the only place big enough. Father Miguel already agreed. We are organizing. We are going to expose this app for what it is. You, me, and the Father. We will draft a petition. We will get City Hall to audit this entire predatory system." He was so certain, so full in his belief, I could not tell him. I could not tell him about the anonymous text, about the seed of suspicion that was now planted deep in my gut. I looked at Eli, his honest, determined face, and I agreed. We would fight. The meeting was packed. Eli was magnificent. He spoke with fire. I presented the data, the charts showing the flow of money to Cyprus, the predatory terms. Father Miguel closed the meeting with a prayer for justice, the City Hall representative. Sarah was pale. She saw the news cameras at the back of the room. She stood up and promised a full, immediate audit of the app. We had won. It felt like a victory. It lasted one night. The next night, the rain came back, a cold, driving storm. I was working at the bar when my phone rang. It was Eli. "They cut the power!" he yelled over the wind. "At the women's shelter, the one Father Miguel runs, the backup generator is fried. Someone sabotaged it. Nora, it is freezing in there. There are babies." I ran. I got there in 10 minutes. The shelter was dark. Women were huddled in the lobby, wrapped in blankets. Father Miguel was pacing, his phone to his ear, his face frantic. A large flatbed truck pulled up to the curb, its headlights cutting through the rain. It was not a utility truck. Matteo DeLuca jumped out of the driver's side. He was not wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans and a heavy work coat. He walked to the back of the truck, where a massive industrial generator sat. "Where is the hookup?" he yelled to Father Miguel. His men were not with him. He was alone. He started unstrapping the generator himself, the rain plastering his dark hair to his head. I just stood there, stunned. He was helping. He was here, in the street, doing the work. Then I heard it, a sound that was not the rain, a sharp, dry crack. A spark flew from the brick wall, not 3 inches from Matteo's head. He froze. I am a nursing student. I know anatomy. I knew exactly what that bullet would have done to his skull. Someone was on the roof of the building across the street. It was not a robbery. It was not a random act. It was a warning shot. They were telling him to back off. The enemy was public now. Matteo did not look up. He did not run for cover. He took a deep breath, turned back to the generator, and finished unhooking the strap. He motioned to Eli, "Help me with this cable." He had been shot at, and he did not even flinch. I saw him later, after the generator was running, after the lights were on and the heat was kicking in. He was standing by his truck, soaking wet, 2 of his men. The refrigerators from the bar had finally arrived. They looked furious. Matteo was calm. His voice was low, but it cut through the storm. "This changes," he said to them. "They went after the shelter. They went after women and children. The old rules are done. My new rule is simple. No families. You do not touch families. Not ours. Not theirs. Anyone breaks that rule. You answer to me." I stood in the doorway of the shelter, my notebook in my hand. I wrote down his words. No families. That was the line. I would hold him to it. If he broke that rule, our deal was over. The committee meetings became battlegrounds after that. Matteo attended every single one. He sat across the table from me. We argued. We fought about everything. "You cannot just give people money, Nora," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "After I proposed a relief fund, it creates weakness. You need efficiency. You need structure. Your efficiency is just a word for cruelty." I shot back. "Your structure is a cage. You are not teaching discipline. You are punishing poverty." We fought about ethics. We fought about the cost of kindness. We fought about what it truly meant to help someone. He did not treat me like his secretary. He treated me like an opponent. And a strange, terrible thing happened. A chemistry. It was not romantic. It was not soft. It was the sharp, metallic spark of 2 knives striking each other in the dark. It was the raw honesty he had asked for. He listened to me, his dark eyes fixed on my face, even as I tore his arguments apart. He never raised his voice. He just pushed back, with logic, with his cold, hard view of the world. I started to see the man behind the mask, the man who inherited an empire he did not build, the man who was being eaten by a digital monster he could not control, the man who paid a stranger's rent and delivered a generator in the rain. I was supposed to be his enemy. I was supposed to be the spy in his camp, but I found myself, in the quiet of the night, wondering if he was the only other honest person in that room. I hated myself for it. I held on to my anger. I held on to the memory of my father. I held on to the rule, no families. This was not about attraction. This was about survival. I would not let him see. I would not let him in. I would keep my boundary. I came home from my nursing clinical just after 9 o'clock. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. "June," I called out. The kitchen light was on. Her phone was on the counter, plugged into the charger. Her small purse was next to it, the one she never went anywhere without. "June." I ran to her room. It was empty. The bed was made. I checked the bathroom. Empty. This was not a relapse. A relapse meant foil, the smell of smoke, her hiding. This was an absence, a void. My blood did not just run cold. It stopped. My clinical training, my calm assessment, all of it evaporated. My phone vibrated. I grabbed it, my hands shaking. A new number, a text message. First, a picture. My heart stopped. It was June. She was in a dark room, tied to a wooden chair. Her eyes were wide with a terror so profound it did not look real. She was alive. She was awake. Then the words came through. He broke his rule. He heard our business. So we heard his. Tell DeLuca to be at the Kopech warehouse at midnight. He gives us the docs. He gets the girl. He comes with police. She dies. The Kopech warehouse. The name was a ghost story, a name I had read on 1,000 brittle documents. It was the place, the warehouse where the roof collapsed, the place my father burned. I did not call the police. I did not call Eli. I ran out of the apartment. I ran the 10 blocks to the Union Hotel. He was there. He was sitting in the darkest booth at the back, alone. His 2 guards, the men like mountains, stood by the entrance. They saw me coming. They moved to block me. "Nora," one of them said, his voice a low rumble, "not tonight." I did not stop. I pushed past him. He has to see this. I walked straight to the booth. Matteo DeLuca looked up from his glass of water. His face was calm. He did not look surprised to see me. I did not speak. I threw my phone onto the table. I slid it across the wood. He looked down. He read the text. He swiped to the picture of June. His face did not change. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was a terrifying, absolute stillness, the neutrality of a surgeon about to make the first cut. "He broke my rule," he whispered, his voice so low it was almost silent. He was talking about Father Miguel. "They," I said, my voice shaking with a rage that was holding me together. "They took my sister. They want the docs. Kopech warehouse. Midnight." He stood up, all grace and coiled power. He slid a $20 bill onto the table. "Go home, Nora. Lock your door. I will handle this." "No." He actually paused. He turned to me, a look of faint amusement on his face. "This is not a committee meeting. You are a student. I am handling this." "You are wrong," I said. I was shaking, but my voice was hard. "I'm going with you." "Do not be absurd." "I know that building," I said, my words coming fast. "I have spent 15 years of my life studying that building. I have the fire report memorized. I know its anatomy." I grabbed a cocktail napkin from the dispenser on the table. I pulled the pen from my pocket. "You go in the front, you are walking into a kill box." I sketched a rough diagram. "The main floor is weak. Here, structural integrity compromised. But the east wing, the sprinkler system, it was never repaired. It is a dry system. It is their biggest weakness." He stopped, and he looked at the napkin, and he looked at me, his eyes narrowing. He was not seeing a barmaid. He was seeing an asset. "And the basement," I continued. "The fire access tunnel my father used. It floods when the river is high. The rain last night. It will be 3 feet deep in water. It is a death trap." "You know its weaknesses," he said slowly. "I know why my father never came out," I corrected him. "They took my sister. I am going." He stared at me for a long, hard second. He made a decision. "You will not go in," he said. It was not a request. "You will be my medical support, my peripheral command. You will stay outside. You will not move. You will not speak unless I speak to you." He reached into his pocket and tossed something onto the table, a small, black earpiece. "Understood." "Understood," I said. We arrived at 11:45. The warehouse was a black hole against the dark sky, a monument to my childhood nightmares. Matteo was not alone. He had 4 men, all dressed in black, all moving with a silence that was terrifying. He placed me behind a stack of rusted oil drums, a good 200 yards from the side entrance he planned to use. "Do not move," he commanded. I put the earpiece in. It crackled to life. I heard his breathing. I heard the crunch of gravel under their boots. "We are in," his voice whispered in my ear, and then they were gone, slipping into the blackness of the building. I waited. The air was cold. It smelled of the river, of wet rust, and old stone. And something else. It was faint, a sharp, stinging smell that caught in the back of my throat. Ammonia. I crept closer, my nurse's training kicking in. I sniffed the air again. Ammonia, and something else, like bitter almonds. No, chlorine. I knew that smell. I knew that combination. In the hospital, we used them separately for cleaning. Together, they created chloramine gas, lethal. "Mateo," I whispered, my hand cupping the tiny microphone on my collar. "It is a chemical trap. The sprinklers, they are not dry. They are rigged. It is not water. It is ammonia and chlorine. Get out." There was a second of silence. Then a new sound, a loud click, a feedback squeal, and a voice, not Mateo's, a voice that was amplified, echoing from speakers mounted on the warehouse. The little nurse is very smart. The voice was kind. It was warm. It was the voice of Father Miguel. "Welcome, Mateo." The voice boomed, dripping with false compassion. "A shame you brought a guest. I had hoped for a private confession." "Miguel." Mateo's voice was ice in my ear. "You came to my shelter, Mateo," Miguel said. "You brought your generator. You thought you were helping, but you are just like your father. Filth. This neighborhood does not need another gangster. It needs a savior. It needs me." "You took her," Mateo said. "A civilian. You broke the rule." "I'm not bound by your rules." Miguel's voice cracked with sudden, screaming rage. "I'm doing the work of God, that app. That beautiful, clean machine. It washes the money. It turns their sin into capital. Capital that I use to feed the poor, to house the mothers. I take the sin of the app, and I purify it through my charity." He was laundering the money. The Eastern Europeans provided the app, and he provided the moral cover. He needed Mateo gone. He needed to be the only one left. The saint. "The docs, Mateo," Miguel yelled, "or the girl burns with you." I looked at the bag Mateo had left with me. Gauze, saline, and a small, handheld community radio, the one Eli used for organizing. My heart was pounding. I had an idea. I had set up a low-band transmitter for the community meeting to broadcast to the neighborhood watch teams. It was still in my bag. I pulled it out. I flipped the switch. I held the radio's microphone to my earpiece. "Father," I whispered, my voice shaking. "You used Maria Rivas's rent. You used the shelter money. You call that God's work." I pressed the transmit button. I was broadcasting my question and his answer to the whole neighborhood. Miguel laughed, his voice echoing from the speakers, now also echoing over the radio band. "My dear, honest Nora, you are so simple. It is a holy transaction. I take their despair, and I give them hope. What is a little dirty money compared to a saved soul?" "Now," Miguel's voice hardened. "Burn." A loud whoosh. I heard it over the earpiece. The sprinklers. "Nora," Mateo yelled in my ear. "The circuit box east wall, cut the power now." I ran. I did not think. I found the box, exactly where the schematics said it would be. It was heavy, rusted. I tore the cover off. I saw the main breaker. I put all my weight on it and pulled, The hissing sound stopped. Then, gunfire. A series of short, controlled bursts. Not a wildfire fight, an execution. I heard June scream. I broke my promise. I ran. I burst through the side door. The inside was chaos. Smoke filled the air. Not gas, just smoke. Sparks rained down from the rafters. I saw him. Father Miguel. He was backed against a wall by two of Mateo's men. He was holding his large wooden cross like a weapon, his face a mask of shocked disbelief. He truly believed he was untouchable. Across the room, I saw Mateo. He was shielding June with his own body, pushing her toward a side exit. One of Miguel's men, a young kid in a hoodie, was on the ground. He was clutching his thigh. Blood was pulsing between his fingers, bright red, arterial. Mateo was yelling at June, pushing her to safety. He saw me. His eyes were black with fury. "I told you to stay outside." "He's bleeding out," I screamed. I ran, not to Mateo, but to the wounded man. I dropped my med bag. I ripped it open. "Press here," I commanded the young man, my voice pure, cold nurse. "Hard," he cried out, but he did it. I pulled out a tourniquet and strapped it high on his leg. I was setting my own rule. No one dies, not even him. A sound from above, a terrible, groaning crack of old wood. The gunfire had lit the ancient, dry rafters. The roof was coming down. Nora Mateo roared. Now, a massive burning beam crashed to the floor, cutting me off from the exit. A wall of fire stood between us. I was trapped. I saw Mateo shove June out the door, into the arms of one of his men, and then he came back for me. He did not hesitate. He vaulted the flaming debris as if it was a puddle. He reached me in 2 strides. He did not ask. He did not offer a hand. He lifted me. His arms wrapped around my waist like steel bands, and he turned, shielding me with his back as he ran. He was carrying me, a firefighter's carry. He was carrying me out of the building that had eaten my father. He reached the doorway. The frame itself was a mouth of fire. He did not just run through it. He stopped on the threshold. He set me down on my feet. He was still behind me, but he was not pushing. "You walk out first," he panted, his voice rough. He was giving it to me, the choice, to leave the tomb on my own terms. I stepped out onto the wet gravel. I took a breath of cold, clean river air. And then the night exploded. Sirens, flashing red and blue lights. The entire Chicago police force was swarming the docks. Reporters were right behind them. Eli, he must have heard the broadcast. I saw June, wrapped in a blanket, safe in Eli's car. I saw Father Miguel, his hands cuffed, his face white with rage as people from the shelter, his flock, pointed and screamed at him. A reporter was holding up a phone, playing the recording of his confession, the app, the alliance. It was all coming down. I saw Mateo when he was standing by his truck, his face smudged with soot. He was not resisting. 2 police officers were walking toward him, their faces grim. Mateo DeLuca, one of them said. Yes, Mateo said, "You are under arrest for outstanding charges of economic fraud and conspiracy." It was not the firefight. It was not the kidnapping. It was the old plea deal, the case the Federals had been building. He did not look surprised. He looked finished. He held his hands out for the cuffs. He turned his head. His eyes scanned the chaos until they found mine. He looked past me, to Eli's car, and he saw June. He gave one sharp nod. The debt was paid. His gaze locked back on me. The police were cuffing him. He did not smile. He just looked at me, the barmaid, the nurse, the one honest person. "Keep them honest," he said. His voice was so quiet, only I could hear it. Then they put him in the car and drove him away. The aftermath was not loud. It was the sound of silence, the ringing in my ears after the sirens faded. June and I stayed in our apartment for 2 days. We did not talk about the fire, or the warehouse, or the man with the wooden cross. We just drank hot tea and watched the city light move across the living room floor. The bruise on her cheek, where she had been struck, faded from a dark, angry purple to a sick, yellowish green. It was a visible reminder of the cost of it all. On the 3rd day, June woke up, walked to the kitchen, and picked up the phone. Her hand was steady. She was not the trembling girl from the bar. She was someone else. She was a survivor. "Yes," she said into the phone, her voice clear. "I'm calling about your inpatient program. I would like to check in today." I put my own cup down. She was calling the private rehabilitation center, the expensive one with the green lawns, the one I had been saving for. She looked at me and nodded, a small, firm gesture. She was not asking for permission. She was making a choice. The kidnapping had not shattered her. It had burned away the last of her excuses. She had seen, firsthand, what her addiction was worth to men like Father Miguel. She had been a piece of property in a negotiation. She refused to be one any longer. The most bitter irony was the money. Eli, in a stroke of genius, had filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of every person who had ever used the loan app. With Father Miguel's broadcasted confession, the case was airtight. The Eastern European syndicate vanished, their digital assets frozen by the federals. The courts, in a rare moment of perfect justice, ordered those seized funds to be diverted into a restitution program for the victims. June's recovery, the one I had poured whiskey and bourbon for, was paid for by the very criminal enterprise that had preyed on her. Father Miguel's fall was absolute. His betrayal was not just financial, it was spiritual. The community he had curated, the people he had saved, they were the ones who testified against him. Maria Rivas, the mother who had almost lost her apartment, walked into the police station with her bank statements. She showed them how the anonymous donations from the church always arrived exactly one day after the app had seized her paycheck. The women from the shelter, the kitchen staff, the men from the pews, they all came forward. He had not given them dignity. He had given them the crumbs from his own table, a table built on their despair. His empire of false morality crumbled to dust. In the wake of the scandal, City Hall scrambled. Sarah, the public relations woman, was in full damage control. She called me. Her voice was bright, strained, the sound of someone trying to glue a shattered vase back together. "Nora, wonderful news," she said. "The city is establishing a new, truly transparent community relief fund. We are dissolving the old committee, of course. And we would like you to be the new director. It is a paid position, naturally, a very generous salary." I pictured it, an office, a title, a paycheck that meant I could quit the bar, that I could buy new textbooks. I pictured myself in a bright blue suit, smiling at cameras, talking about synergy. "No, thank you, Sarah," I said. The silence on the other end was complete. "I do not understand," she said. "It is a conflict of interest," I said, my voice quiet. "I am a nurse. I am a barmaid. I cannot be on your payroll. I will attend the public meetings. I will hold you accountable, but I will not work for you." I would keep them honest, from the outside. Eli did not rest. For him, the warehouse was not an end. It was a starting line. He called an emergency meeting of the union. "They beat us because we did not speak their language," he boomed, his voice bouncing off the cinder block walls of the union hall. "We knew solidarity, but we did not know finance. No more." He completely restructured the union's new member program. He added mandatory workshops, how to read a predatory loan agreement, how to spot a digital shark, building community credit. He was not just healing the wound, he was vaccinating the entire neighborhood. Matteo De Luca's fate was decided quickly. He took the plea deal, the prosecution, faced with my testimony that he had not fired a shot, that he had rescued June, and that I had administered aid to one of Miguel's men, dropped all the violent charges. His own rule, no families, had saved him. But he was not innocent. The original federal case for economic fraud and conspiracy stuck. He was ordered to forfeit the docks. He had to permanently dissolve the De Luca Community Ventures Fund. He was given a fine so large it made the front page of the paper, and he was sentenced to 2,000 hours of community service. The judge, a woman known for her creative sentencing, did not assign him to a highway cleanup crew. She assigned him to the Southside Public Rehabilitation Center, the same clinic whose budget cuts had started this entire nightmare. He was ordered to spend his hours scrubbing floors, making coffee, and cleaning up after the city's most vulnerable. He was sentenced to serve the very people he and Miguel had preyed upon. We did not speak. I did not go to the courthouse. I did not see him. I was busy. I was driving June to the rehab center, a different one from where he was assigned. I was picking up extra shifts at the bar. I was studying for the nursing finals I had almost missed. 1 month later, an email appeared in my inbox. The sender was an anonymous, encrypted address. The subject line was empty. The message was only 5 words. "The coffee here is terrible." My heart did not leap. It just squeezed. I knew it was him. It was not an apology. It was not an excuse. It was not a plea. It was just a fact, a raw, honest observation. I waited 1 full day before I replied. "It is supposed to be." I wrote, "Try adding a pinch of salt to the grounds." A week passed. Another email. There is a maple tree outside the intake window. The leaves are yellow. I looked out my own window. I know that tree. I typed. I have my clinical rotations in the building next door. Our correspondence was sterile. It was brief. It was safe. We were two people reporting observations from opposite sides of a sterile border. We talked about the coffee, the weather, and the long hours of our shifts. We did not talk about the fire. We did not talk about my father. We did not talk about the night he carried me from a burning building. I found the key to the church basement in the pocket of my old jacket. It felt heavy, like a stone. I walked back to St. Mary's. It was quiet. A new priest was there, a young man who looked overwhelmed. I handed him the key. I was the secretary for the committee. I said, it felt like a confession. He let me go downstairs one last time. The room was cold, and the smell of damp concrete and mildew was still strong. I walked to the small window and pushed it open. The air that flowed in was cool and smelled of wet leaves and damp, old wood. It was the smell of an era ending. I closed the door, left the key on the table, and walked out. I visited June. She was gaining weight. Her eyes were clear for the first time in years. She was writing. She was always writing in a notebook. She showed me a page. It was a letter, tucked into the back, written in her strong, new handwriting. It was addressed to Matteo De Luca. I do not know if you're a good man, she wrote. I think you are probably not, but you kept your word. You told my sister I would be protected. In that warehouse, I was a hostage. I was a thing. You could have used me. You could have left me to die. But you did not. You came back for me. Thank you for not making me a part of your war. Are you going to send it? I asked, handing the notebook back to her. She shook her head. No, I do not need him to read it. I just needed to write it. I passed my exams. I started my next rotation, this time at the free night clinic, the one that served the undocumented, the uninsured. The place was drowning. We were running out of everything. We were using expired bandages. I saw the article in the paper, a tiny column buried on page 6. Southside Clinic saved by anonymous donor. A single donation of $500,000, enough to keep the lights on for another year. The clinic organized a blood drive to celebrate. I volunteered, taking vitals, handing out cookies and juice. I was taping gauze to a donor's arm when I smelled it. It was not the sharp tang of antiseptic. It was not the metallic smell of the blood. It was warm oak and charred orange. I looked up, scanning the room, and he was not there. It was just nurses and donors and the tired, grateful staff. But the scent was thick in the air. He had been there. He had probably signed a false name, given his blood, and left. He was still cleaning up the mess. He was still paying his debts. Silently, in the places where the system had broken. The first snow of the winter fell on Christmas Eve. It was a quiet, clean snow, the kind that muffled the sounds of the city. I was at the night clinic, my feet aching inside my nursing shoes. The clinic, the one his anonymous donation had saved, was quiet. Most people were home. We only had a few patients, mostly men seeking shelter from the cold. I was restocking the supply closet, counting gauze pads. When I heard the coffee machine gurgle, I walked out to the small break room. He was there. Matteo De Luca. He was not wearing an expensive suit or a dark wool sweater. He was wearing faded jeans, work boots, and a plain gray sweatshirt. He looked tired. He was fumbling with the coffee filter, spilling grounds on the counter. He was serving his community hours. He was, for all intents and purposes, an apprentice volunteer. The head nurse, a wonderful, terrifying woman named Ruth, walked past, saw the mess, and snapped, "De Luca, if you cannot manage a simple filter, you can go scrub the intake floors again." "Yes, ma'am," he said, his voice quiet. He did not look up. I watched him. The man who had commanded the docks, who had faced down gunfire without flinching, was being scolded for his poor coffee-making skills. He caught me looking. A faint, tired smile touched his lips. We found ourselves alone for a moment, near the vending machines. The silence was heavy, filled with the hum of the fluorescent lights. I did not need you to save me, Nora, he said, his voice low. He was looking at the machine, not at me. I did not save you. I said, you saved yourself, with your no families rule. The federals saved you. The judge saved you. He shook his head, a small, slow movement. I did not need saving. I was already on a path. I needed you to keep me real, to keep me honest. I looked at him, at the man who was scrubbing floors and making terrible coffee. I thought of the man who had paid Maria's rent and delivered a generator in the rain. I do not need you to be clean, Mateo, I said. My voice was just as quiet. I just need you to keep your word. He finally turned to look at me. His eyes were clear. The shadows were still there, but they were no longer in charge. I am trying, he said. The city was trying, too. The predatory loan app was dead, erased from existence by a federal injunction. City Hall, in a desperate attempt to look like heroes, had approved a new public pay advance fund. It was run by a local community bank. Eli, who had fought for a seat on its new board, ensured its terms were transparent. The digital sharks were gone. The system that had broken June was, itself, broken. June was a different person. I went to her peer support meeting, held in the bright, clean room of the center she had graduated from. She was not a participant anymore. She was leading the group. She was standing at the front of the room, reading from the notebook she always carried. Honesty is not about being nice, she said, her voice strong and sure, resonating in the quiet room. Honesty is not polite. Honesty is a muscle. It means choosing the hard, real thing, every single day. It is about showing up. She looked up from her notebook and her eyes found mine. She smiled. I met Mateo again. One last time. His community service was finished. He was free to go. We walked by the river, the same river that flowed past the docks. The air was frigid and sharp. We could see our breath. We did not hold hands. I kept my hands shoved deep in my coat pockets. He kept his hands in his. We walked with a careful, respectful distance between us. The chemistry, that raw, sharp spark, was still there. But so were the ghosts. So was the boundary. We were not pretending the past did not exist. We were not trying to erase the fire. The investigation is officially closed, he said, stopping to look at the dark, moving water. I said, they gave me all of my father's old files, from the Kopech fire, the first one, the one that killed your father. I tensed. I did not want to talk about this. Not here. Why are you telling me this, Mateo? Because your father was in the report, he said. He wrote part of it. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a scanned copy of an old, yellowed document, a fire department after-action report. I took it. I recognized the strong, clear handwriting. It was my father's. I read the words, entered basement access tunnel to search for reported civilian, located one male child, approximately 10 years old, conscious but disoriented, carried child to safety, handed over to paramedics, named Mateo De Luca. I looked up from the paper, my mind spinning, trying to make the world stop moving. My father, he saved you. Mateo nodded. I knew who you were, that night at the bar, when you threw the drink. You knew, I whispered. I had seen your name on the committee volunteer list. I thought it was a coincidence, but when you walked up to me, when you looked at me with that same fire in your eyes, I did not just see you. I saw him, your father. He looked back at the river. I read the old newspaper clippings after he died. He was the only one who told an absolute truth about that fire. He told them the structural integrity was compromised. He told them the sprinklers were faulty. Everyone else lied to protect DeLuca Sr., but not him, not Hale. He turned to face me. When I saw you, I knew whose daughter you were. I recognized the bloodline. That is why I said it. At last, someone honest. I was not just talking about you, Nora. I was talking about your entire family. It all clicked into place. The pull, the strange sense of destiny, the reason he had trusted me. It was not a random encounter. It was an echo. We were quiet for a long time. "I am finished here, he said finally. "My plea is satisfied. My hours are done. I am leaving Chicago. The docks are gone. The business is gone. There is nothing left for me." My heart felt a complicated ache. It was relief. It was sadness. It was the right thing. "Before I go," he said. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a single, new, shiny key on a simple metal ring. He pressed it into my gloved hand. It was warm from his body. "What is this?" I asked. "The Kopech warehouse," he said. "The city seized it as part of my plea. My fines paid for its renovation. It is a community center now." He tapped the key. "Look at the tag." I turned the key over. A small, brass tag was attached to the ring. Engraved on it were 2 words. "Hail Center." I could not breathe. "Your father died there," Mateo said, his voice low and rough. "It is only right that you be the one to open the doors." He looked at me, a long, searching look. He did not kiss me. He did not touch me. He did not say goodbye. He just gave me that one sharp nod, the one from the emergency room, the one from the arrest, the nod that meant a debt was paid. And then he turned and walked away, down the riverbank, until he was just a dark shape disappearing into the cold, winter night. I stood there until I could no longer feel my fingers. Then I walked. I walked to the warehouse. It was not the haunted, burned-out shell of my nightmares. The brick had been cleaned, the windows were new, and they were bright, glowing with warm light from within. I stood at the new, heavy wooden door. I put the key in the lock. It turned, smooth and silent. I pushed the door open. It was warm inside. It was beautiful. There were shelves of books. There were computers for children to do their homework. In the back, where the fire had been the worst, there was a small, clean, clinical space. The smell hit me. It was not the smell of rust or gas or fear. It was the smell of fresh-cut pine, of new paint, and of possibility. And, just faintly, underneath it all, I could still smell it, the scent of old, extinguished smoke, the past, finally, truly, put to rest. A life, locked, a new one, just beginning. I stepped inside, and I smiled. I was free to choose tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am so glad we got to share it together. I would love to know where in the world you are listening from. Please let me know in the comments and share your own thoughts on Nora and Mateo. Do not forget to subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories. And like this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit that hype button. It really helps get the story out to more listeners just like you.